What does it really take to grow a civil engineering company? It's both exciting and challenging. In this episode, we're going to talk to Brian Smith, founding partner and civil engineer at Urban Design Partners. And Brian's going to talk about some of those challenges and how to overcome them, like when to hire a non-billable professional, someone to help you with the marketing and business development activities that you're just not good at. Brian also touches on the importance of developing your staff, really investing in your people to help grow the company and take it to the next level. This is part of our Civil Engineering Entrepreneur Series. So we're going to jump in with Brian, but first, a quick word from our sponsor. This Civil Engineering Entrepreneurs Series is brought to you by BigTime. BigTime is the industry-leading PSA software providing time tracking, billing, and project management for engineering firms, with the goal of getting your business back to business. You can learn more about BigTime's PSA solution at bigtime.net. All right, so now I'd like to welcome on our guest to the podcast for today, Brian Smith. Brian is a founding partner and civil engineer at Urban Design Partners in Charlotte, North Carolina. Brian, welcome to the Civil Engineering Podcast.
Thank you, Anthony. Glad to be here.
So, Brian, we're focusing this series, of course, on entrepreneurs in the civil engineering world. You started the business. You were one of the founding partners in 2005, so it's been some time now. So, first of all, congratulations on that. I know how, I know just making it a few years can be a big win. You've been going for a while here. Talk to us a little bit about, the backstory, what led you to starting the company, and kind of how the company has progressed over time.
I started the firm back in 2005 with a friend and business partner, at the time another engineer. We had worked together at a larger design firm here in Charlotte, started the firm just wanting to provide better service to clients. That was something that we really felt there was a gap in the market. The service part of professional services had been kind of dropped, and so we really wanted to provide that to our clients. So we started back in 2005. We're very fortunate, was able to get a lot of work, right from the beginning. We grew up through 2008, 2009 when the recession hit. Struggled, a lot of lean years for a few years, and then have had steady growth since 2010. So we're on a nice long ride now.
Yeah, for sure. That's great. And Brian really mentions, I think, one of the key points to building any business, which is, identifying kind of a need or a gap in the market and kind of filling that need, which is in Brian's case, felt like there could be a little bit of a better job in terms of delivering good service in the civil engineering field in his area down in Charlotte, which is great. And obviously, it's worked out not without, the ups and downs. I think that a lot of businesses will have to deal with, of course, especially as we've seen here in the last year or so. But that being said, talk a little bit about your role. I mean, I know you're a civil engineer by background. Obviously, when you grow a business, I think you probably start in the beginning doing everything, and then things change as you go. Yeah. Talk a little bit about your progression in the company and kind of what your kind of key roles are today.
Starting out, obviously, you're kind of, it was just the two of us, and we did everything. I mean, we did work, administrative stuff. I took over the accounting part of the business, which is something that I really didn't have any kind of background in, but took over the financial aspect, ARs, APs, all of that, and really have just kind of over the last couple of years been transitioning more of that away from me. As we grew and then shrunk, down and then started to grow again, I was kind of back into a lot of those administrative roles, which I'm now trying to get out of. It's been harder to get out of the second time around as we have grown. But obviously you go from being a technical and engineering mindset to more of running the business, administrative, managing the people, managing staff, managing clients to provide work for everybody.
Yeah, sure. And so that's kind of where where we wanted to go next was into the whole people side of things. So roughly how many people is Urban right now?
We're 21 people total and 3 offices.
Okay, 21 people, 3 offices. And so this is obviously one of the big things that, we don't learn in engineering school, which is, managing people, interacting with
Mhm.
people. And, in the position that you're in, it's really critical in terms of building a culture for a company, finding the right people. Talk a little bit about first of all, I guess in general, in terms of, the importance of people and how you handle that. I mean, I could see a lot of civil engineers out there that might be listening to this that are thinking of starting their own firm, and they're kind of like, I'm pretty good at the civil engineering side of things, but I'm not so great of like dealing with people, interacting with people, hiring. How does one go about, learning those things?
For me, it was really just a learn as you go. No, in my position before at a larger firm, didn't have a lot of experience dealing with a large group of staff underneath me. Uh, Worked with only 1 or 2 clients, and then moved into, managing multiple people and multiple projects, multiple clients all at the same time. Um, One thing I do think engineering schools are doing better now is uh, the communication and collaboration part. We work closely with University of North Carolina at Charlotte and their senior design program, and enjoy that. And I definitely see a change in the engineering education now versus when I got out of school at that same school 25 years ago.
Well, that's
So
good to know. That's good to know the interaction with the schools. And
yeah.
if you're obviously a pretty local business, you're able to reach out to some schools and start
Mhm.
some new programs of sure. Now, obviously, Brian, as a civil engineering company grows, there ultimately becomes more seats in the company.
Mhm.
When you start a business, maybe it's you and your partner, you're doing the marketing, the business development, the
Yeah.
engineering, all that stuff. But then as time goes on, you need to kind of identify and kind of fill some of these different roles in the company. How do you assess kind of, who can do what, or when you need to say, okay, now we need someone that actually is dedicated in this area?
Mhm.
How does one decide that?
We the way we decided it was as we looked at the time being spent by the our technical staff doing those roles, and the time being spent and the value of those dollars not being and the time not being spent on billable work. So like the last position we brought on was a marketing person, a marketing director. Um, and that was based on one, our desire to continue growing, but also we were spending a lot of time um, trying to figure out what to do, how to do it. So that's not what we were trained to do. So that's when we decided, okay, we need to bring somebody in here, um, hire somebody to come in and handle that role. The same with the financial. What we did there was as actually bringing a third party bookkeeper and um, CFO, fractional CFO. So we don't have those in house, but we use a third party.
Okay. But it was a process of continuing to identify at what time a role becomes large enough to
Yeah,
get somebody else to do it,
yeah,
essentially. And it sounds to me like one of the key factors to being able to do that is the ability to measure things, whether it's measuring people's time and what they're working on. You need to have some kind of metrics to be able to, flag those things. Is that
yeah,
accurate?
yeah. And we've had we review that. Those have evolved over time, but yeah, you're always constantly looking at how people are spending their time. I mean, that's um, this. We work in private development, and it's a time basis, dollars and time is money.
Yeah, sure. No, time is money. I mean, that's fundamental. That's why I think a lot of engineers get an email from their manager saying we got to get your billability up,
Yeah.
next month, and you're always waiting to hear that, for sure. So it's good to hear that. One last thing in regards to people and the development of people in your company. I mean, obviously at EMI, we do a lot of training, and a question that I always like to ask companies is how do you identify kind of who needs what types of training, or, do you have a process to kind of identify where on the career path people are so that you're making sure that people get skilled up? How does that look for you guys right now?
One thing that we do is we do a quarterly review or quarterly sit down check in with every staff member, and then also an annual review with them. And we talk about what they want to do in their career. Where do they see their career path? Do they want to be more on the technical side, or do they want to be more on the management side? And based on that, look to find areas, if they want to go into the management, find some project management courses we've sent several people to your class, project management class, and it's been very well. They've all enjoyed it, have gained a lot of knowledge and skills that they've, then turned around and began using in the office.
Sure. No, that's great. I mean, I'm really happy to hear you say that, because a lot of the companies that I talk to are doing the annual performance reviews, but it's great to hear that you have quarterly sit downs as well, because I personally think a year is a really long time to kind of
Yeah.
leave things up in the air like that. We do quarterly rocks here at EMI. We sit down every quarter and look at who's doing what. And I
Yeah.
also like the fact, Brian, that you're asking them about what their interests are, what they're passionate about. Can we line you up with something that if you want to become a manager, we want to help you with that. That seems to, make sure people stay engaged.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, that's something that, because not everybody wants to be a project manager or manage, people. It's different skills. Some do want to do it, some don't. And those quarterly reviews and annual reviews are done with different people on our leadership team. So, you get different feedback in all of them. So that we think that's a real good thing.
Yeah, no, that's great for sure. All right, I want to hop over to another topic here. That's a topic I think that is one that a lot of engineers are familiar with, but I'm talk about a little bit more in terms of a business sense. Is when you grow a firm of any kind, especially in the civil engineering world, you're inevitably going to encounter problems along the way. As an entrepreneur, really in any industry. So, how do you, as a company, kind of identify a problem that arises? Like, what is the process for saying, hey, we got to really put some attention on this area of the company right now, because we need some help there?
Well, we have a leadership team and we meet weekly. We use a process called EOS to run the business. That really helps us flush out those areas. And one thing that we're going through now is defining our core processes and getting those documented and distributed to all staff members. So that really kind of brings out those pain points that they don't hide for too long.
That's great. I'm happy to hear you say that, because we use EOS at EMI here too, and
Okay.
I feel like it's a lifesaver, and I feel like it's really good for engineers in that it's very structured, and it
It,
allows us to be very structured, right, in building the business.
yeah, I think it is a great way. If you just, yeah, it is very structured. You just have to stick with it. We've been doing it for a few years, and I think every year we get a little better at it.
Yeah, for sure. And it is. It's an important. I mean, whether you use EOS or some kind of system, whatever it is, having something that allows you to be able to identify problems when they arise is really important, because solving problems is a really important part of growing any business, quite frankly.
Yeah.
And so, with that being said, if you don't mind sharing, I mean, what would you say are some of the challenges right now that you're facing in terms of the stage of your company that you're at and trying to grow it further?
Probably the biggest, challenge right now is finding, talented, people. We're always looking for people, um, but there seems to be a real shortage in the market of people right now, engineers and landscape architects, which we also have in the office. Um, Especially experienced ones, getting people to move to change, companies has been been a real problem, a real difficulty, struggle.
Yeah, it seems right now, I mean, the civil engineering industry is, you know, pretty booming, and it seems to me like it's going to be that way for a long time, with infrastructure investment and, investment in communities. And, even with the pandemic, as terrible as it's been in terms of, health for a lot of people, when I talk to civil engineering companies, I haven't heard too much of a slowdown, which, lends it to your point in that, people aren't that slow and there aren't a lot of people out there, not just out there and available, but that are looking to move because, they're busy, they've got good jobs. So I can certainly see how that can be, challenging. And it speaks a little bit, Brian, to what you talked about earlier, which is establishing, a good program for bringing in younger professionals and building them and growing them, like with the university, having an intern program. I mean, I know there's always times where you need to hire maybe more experienced people, but a lot of civil engineering owners that I talk to have really put much more of an emphasis the last few years on hiring a good group of interns and spending a lot of time in growing them and cultivating them so that hopefully for the long term you have some good staff as they grow. But again, when you look to hire, I think, experienced professionals in civil engineering, it becomes very challenging to find the right person. And, that's really what you need if you're growing at a speed like a lot of civil engineering firms are growing.
Yeah, we've been very fortunate, and we participate in a lot of the career fairs at the universities around us. There's a lot of great programs around us, and have been very fortunate at hiring. Um, New graduates coming out of school have uh, got a great young staff. But I say right now we're really looking for some mid-level experienced engineers, and they are hard to find and hard to recruit and um, get them interested in looking for a different opportunity. I, I I like people who enjoy where they work, are satisfied where they work, but we just want to talk to them about different opportunity, what we offer versus what they may have at their current position.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think to the point you made earlier, a lot of times people are working at a company because they got in there at a young age or whatever the case may be, and they may not be doing exactly what they want to be doing.
Yeah.
They're sacrificing a little bit or compromising a little bit. And so, in a good market, obviously they have the ability to make a change if they'd like to and get into a little bit more of a niche discipline that maybe they would have liked to be in. So Brian, let me ask you this question and then we're going to wrap up soon and head into our final segment. But in terms of your business, you started in 2005, you had, some ups and downs like a lot of small businesses do. Was there a point during growing the business where you kind of felt like, I feel like we at a point where we're pretty good, meaning like we're going to make it through and we're not going to have to worry about, closing shop? Because I'm sure in those early years, you don't know, everything is in flux. Did you get to a point where there was a size or maybe, a number of clients where you just said, I feel pretty good about where we're at. We feel like we're going to make this thing work.
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily know where that number was, but after a few years, you know, got feeling real comfortable and thought we were definitely we were going to make it, and then obviously the recession hit and that kind of shook us, shook us to the core. Um, but then as we started growing again after working through that, um, and then as we started to grow again, I think I was knew then that hey, we were going to make it. We've seen as bad as it can get at least.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think experiences like that, especially if you make them through them, of course, or can actually really help you to be stronger because you've gotten through that. You can get through something like that again. Would you say that that experience was helpful in terms of this last pandemic and how you had to talk to your staff and handle that?
Yeah, I think definitely. Luckily, during this time around, we didn't have to let any staff go. We really did not see any kind of slowdown during, over the last year. And 2020 was another great year for us. But, it definitely made us more comfortable, dealing with issues with staff, bringing them up early and, just keeping them aware of what's going on. That's one thing we try to do.
Yeah, it seems like you guys, we talked about this offline a little bit, but it seems like you're really transparent with your people and you like to keep them kind of clued into what's going on, which I would assume for them is a great thing.
Yeah, I mean, we do. We try to be very transparent with them, even to the point of we do weekly meetings that are all of our staff every Monday morning, and then once a month we have a longer meeting that we review financials with them. So throughout the year they know what our financial goals are and are we tracking to meet those goals? Are we not tracking to meet them? So yeah, I mean, we try to be very open with them about both sides of the business.
That's great. I mean, because especially in the world we live in today where there's so much, there's so much lack of stability, you could say, for people to be able to be clued in at that level with their company and know that they're kind of the people who are kind of running their companies, which in a lot of cases are leading them in their careers more or less, are giving them insights to where you're headed, where we're headed together, how we're on pace. Things are a little tough right now, but we got some new projects. We think we're going to make it. Here are our
Sure.
projections. That must make them, feel really good and at least feel secure and confident that they're clued in. So that's all good stuff. All right, we're going to take a quick break here. We're going to come back in a minute and finish up by putting Brian on the civil engineering hot seat. All right, we're back with Brian Smith. Again, Brian's founding partner and civil engineer at Urban Design Partners down in Charlotte, North Carolina. We're having a good conversation about, building a business, scaling a business. But now, Brian, it's time to put you on the civil engineering hot seat. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right, here we go. All right, Brian, are there any specific rituals that you practice every day? For example, maybe you do something every morning or every day at lunch, or something that you do consistently on a daily basis that contributes to your success?
I think one thing this year and the end of last year, I've been trying to build a better reading habit. And so when I get in the office first thing in the morning, I will spend a few minutes reading whatever book I may have at the time, maybe going through at the time.
That's great. So establishing that habit of reading, that's great. That being said, what is one book that you might recommend, whether it's to engineers or just a book that you maybe found to be helpful for yourself in your personal or professional development efforts, that you kind of, one that stands out, or a couple?
One that I read because as as we have staff and coaching them is Trillion Dollar Coach, and I cannot remember his name. I think it's Bill, and he coached a lot of the Silicon Valley CEOs and startups early on. So it was a really good book, and he was a football coach,
Wow.
and ended up coaching all these um, tech CEOs and startups. It was a great book.
That's great. Yeah. Trillion Dollar Coach, the leadership playbook of Silicon Valley's Bill Campbell. Wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting. All right. I haven't had that one yet on the podcast yet. We've been a few hundred episodes in, so that's good. All right. So thinking back, Brian, on some of your managers of the past, maybe in your previous, career, opportunities or jobs that you had, not to name anybody specifically, but if you think about some of the managers that you've had in your career that were your favorite or that you really liked, what was the reason that you liked them? What were some of the qualities or traits that they had that you made you say, man, I like this person as a manager?
I think humble and available are two of the big ones. As I think back to some of the managers in the past, that they were approachable. I can talk to them anytime about anything, and that's something that I try to mirror now.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, humble and available, and really, that available one is one that comes up a lot in terms of on the podcast when I ask that question.
Mhm.
Just because a lot of times managers aren't available, and that's a problem. I mean, people need you. They need you to be there for them. They need you to support them, and I think taking on that philosophy is a good one. And I can see why you kind of remember that about them. All right, we've got one final question for you, Brian, and we call it the critical civil engineering career elevator advice question. If you got into an elevator with a civil engineer and you had about 30 to 40 seconds with him or her, and you had to give one piece of advice in that short period of time, what would your advice be?
If it was a young engineer, even to a student, one thing I tell them to work on is their public speaking. I think it's not something that is in college. It's not something that we worked on as engineers very much. But as you get into practice, it's something that you have to do more and more, and to be comfortable in front of a group.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, listen, I tell people that all the time, and it's funny. a lot of colleges and universities, and I'll speak for the engineering students, and a lot of them will tell me, yeah, I'm becoming an engineer because I don't like writing or speaking. And I often tell them, like, you better change your major. You'll be writing reports and presenting them to people. So those are
That's
kind of
right.
two things that you have to do.
And you're
But
also presenting to people or non-technical people. So you have to be able to communicate ideas and designs to people on a non-technical level.
right. Right. That's a really good point. Like, for example, planning board meetings, right? You got a planning board of people that aren't technically savvy, yet you're trying to explain to them why you're putting a stormwater detention basin in the middle of a property.
Correct.
They don't get it, and you have to be able to tell them that. And really what that does is that controls how quickly maybe your project gets approved. It controls how happy your client is and if you're going to get that client again. So there's, a lot of repercussions that come out of being a good speaker as a civil engineering professional.
Yeah.
All right. So once again, Brian Smith, founding partner at Urban Design Partners. Thank you so much for spending some time with us here on the Civil Engineering Podcast. You could check out their website at urbandesignpartners.com. Thanks so much, Brian.
Thank you, Anthony.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Civil Engineering Podcast on YouTube, produced by the Engineering Management Institute. We're always looking for new ways to help engineers become effective managers and leaders. You can view all of our content on our website at engineeringmanagementinstitute.org, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel here for our weekly videos. Until next time, please continue to engineer your own success.